When a Sigma empath goes cold, it doesn't happen suddenly, and it never happens without reason. Something inside them shifts. The warmth they once offered becomes silence. The openness they once gave becomes distance. And the people who pushed them too far finally feel the absence of a presence they never understood. This version of them is not broken, it's awakened. Their coldness is not cruelty, it's clarity. And once it appears, the dynamic with everyone around them changes in ways most never see coming. In this video, you're going to uncover the 8 psychological shifts that happen the moment a Sigma empath shuts down emotionally, the changes that protect them, reshape their relationships, and reveal who they were always meant to become. And if you click away early, you'll miss the one shift that explains why their cold phase is not temporary, but transformational. Before we begin, subscribe to Brainy Empath so you never miss the deeper truths behind your intuition and evolution. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever hit a point where your energy just shut off? If you're here to the end, type cold awakening so I know you're one of the empaths who didn't freeze, you evolved. Their emotional warmth shuts off instantly, revealing a version of them that feels unreachable. It happens in a moment so subtle that most people miss it. One shift, one realization, one internal breaking point where the Sigma empath understands, not emotionally, but instinctively, that someone has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. The warmth that once made them approachable, comforting, and endlessly patient drains from their expression like a door closing in slow motion. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is the quiet transformation of someone who has finally seen the truth clearly enough to stop offering softness to those who mishandled it. In that instant, they become emotionally untouchable, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Their presence changes first. The same person who once listened deeply now offers nothing but silence. The one who once anticipated needs now withdraws into observation. People feel the shift before they understand it. Conversations become colder. Eye contact becomes calculated. Their responses turn measured, as if every word is filtered through a new understanding of what no longer deserves their emotional investment, no longer goes along with the promise they had in mind. They may look remote themselves, but the empath who once gave without limit now gives only what is necessary, and even that is rare. Internally, the Sigma empath is not shutting down. They are recalibrating. They are reclaiming emotional resources. They poured into people who showed they couldn't be trusted with them. That instant cutoff is not cruelty, it is self-preservation, finally activated without hesitation. Their heart stops being a proving ground for other people's chaos. Their spirit stops absorbing the emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry. Instead of being pulled into someone else's storm, they become the stillness that refuses to move. And the most unsettling part for others is that this new version of them feels unreachable in a way that cannot be undone. No apology, no manipulation, no sudden affection can open the warmth they closed, because the Sigma empath doesn't go cold temporarily. They go cold with intention, because the moment they saw the truth, something inside them clicked into place. What others interpret as distance is simply the empath returning to themselves, reclaiming the depth they once shared freely. And once this shift happens, they do not go back. They stop explaining themselves, choosing silence over justification or emotional labor. There comes a moment when a Sigma empath realizes that their explanations have never truly been heard. Their clarity was dismissed, their honesty twisted, their intentions questioned by people who never wanted to understand them in the first place. And when that realization sinks in, something fundamental shifts. They decide that silence is not only easier, it is wiser. Instead of offering emotional labor to people who see their openness as an invitation to take more, they withdraw into a quiet space where their truth no longer needs translation. It is not avoidance, it is liberation from the weight of trying to convince people whose minds were made up long before the conversation even began. Their silence becomes its own kind of presence. It is not passive and it is not empty. It is deliberate, controlled, and sharp, carrying a message far louder than any explanation they could give. When they stop defending their intentions, others suddenly feel the discomfort of facing themselves without the empath cushioning the impact. The Sigma empath is no longer filling the silence with reassurance or softening their boundaries to maintain peace. Instead, they let situations speak for themselves. They let truths reveal themselves without interference, and they allow people to sit with the consequences of their own actions. The empath feels a strange calm settling in, explaining themselves had become a form of emotional bleeding, giving clarity to people who had no interest in respecting it. Now, by choosing silence, they reclaim every piece of energy they once scattered across arguments, misunderstandings, or attempts to soothe insecure minds. They no longer feel compelled to justify their decisions, their distance, or their emotional responses. They know who they are, they know what they mean, and they know that anyone worth keeping in their life will understand without needing a speech. What unsettles others most is how powerful this silence becomes. Without explanations, manipulation loses its grip. Without emotional labor, guilt stops working. Without justifying their boundaries, the empath becomes unreachable in a way that leaves people questioning their own behavior, sometimes for the first time. The Sigma Empath's silence is not empty space, it is a mirror. And once they choose it, they communicate more through what they do not say than they ever did through endless attempts to be understood. Their boundaries become unbreakable, cutting off access people once abused. When a Sigma empath goes cold, their boundaries don't just strengthen, they lock into place like steel gates that once stood open for anyone to walk through. The same person who once made exceptions, offered second chances, and softened their rules to protect others' feelings suddenly stops bending altogether. Their boundaries shift from flexible guidelines into absolute lines that cannot be negotiated, persuaded, or emotionally manipulated. This transformation isn't a performance. It's the result of realizing how many times people mistook their kindness for permission. And once the empath sees that pattern clearly, access becomes something no one is entitled to anymore. People feel this change immediately. Where they once had endless entry into the empath's emotional world, they now find a door that no longer opens on their terms. Messages go unanswered, invitations are declined, conversations become shorter, sharper, more intentional. The empath no longer offers comfort to those who drained them. They no longer absorb guilt, fear, or chaos disguised as connection. Instead, they stand firm, unshaken, unmoved, as if the emotional landscape around them no longer has the power to pull them in. It's the point where their boundaries stop being suggestions and become the law of their inner world. Internally, this shift feels like waking up from a long sleep. The Sigma empath stops feeling responsible for managing other people's emotions and finally protects their own. They no longer let emotional freeloaders borrow their time, their energy, or their peace. The guilt that once made them say yes dissolves into a clarity that makes no their default answer. They understand now that broken people will keep breaking, whoever allows them close enough. So they stop granting closeness to anyone who treats their presence as a resource instead of a privilege. What shocks others most is how irreversible this new boundary is. The empath doesn't rebuild bridges that were burned. They don't reconsider decisions made in clarity. They don't soften because someone suddenly wants access again. Once their boundaries become unbreakable, the past loses its ability to influence them. People who once walked through them without hesitation now find themselves standing on the outside, realizing too late that the window of access has closed forever. The Sigma empath's cold phase isn't about being cruel, it's about reclaiming a self that will no longer be touched by those who didn't value it. They see relationships with absolute clarity, without the influence of emotion or hope. When a Sigma empath goes cold, something profound happens inside them. The fog lifts. The emotional coloring that once softened every flaw, every red flag, every subtle imbalance disappears in an instant. Suddenly, they see the relationship exactly as it is, not as they wished it could be, not as they tried to build it, and not as the other person pretended it was. This clarity is sharp, almost surgical. It slices through illusions and reveals dynamics they ignored for the sake of love, loyalty, or optimism. They no longer feel pulled by emotional attachment or the hope that someone might change. Instead, they observe the reality of the connection with a calm detachment that startles anyone who once relied on their softness to stay close. With this clarity, the empath begins to replay past moments, but now each memory is stripped of justification. What once felt like maybe they didn't mean it becomes they meant it and I overlooked it. What used to be they're going through something shifts into they kept choosing behavior that harmed me. The Sigma Empath finally sees who put effort into the relationship and who simply benefited from their effort. And this new vision isn't emotional. It's logical, objective, and incredibly grounding. They see patterns they never dared to name. They see the imbalance they tolerated. They see the truth they always sensed but emotionally softened to keep the peace. Inside, there is no anger in this clarity, no bitterness, just understanding. They stop idealizing people. They stop romanticizing potential. They stop giving the benefit of the doubt to those who repeatedly showed who they really were. Instead of being pulled by attachment, they are guided by evidence. Every action, every inconsistency, every emotional withdrawal now stands in plain view, and the empath no longer interprets these signs through the lens of empathy. They interpret them exactly as they are. What shocks others is the finality of this shift. Once the Sigma Empath sees the relationship without emotion or hope, they cannot unsee it. They don't argue, they don't negotiate, they don't wait for another sign, they simply detach. Cleanly, quietly, completely, because clarity, once activated in a Sigma Empath, becomes the force that frees them from everything that was breaking them in slow motion. They detach from people's expectations and finally act according to their own needs. There comes a moment in a Sigma Empath's cold transformation when they stop living in the shadow of what others expect from them. The constant pressure to be the strong one, the understanding one, the forgiving one, the one who bends so no one else breaks, all of it loses its hold. They see how deeply people depended on their compliance, how often others shaped the empath's role for their own comfort, and how rarely anyone asked what they needed in return. And in that instant of awakening, the empath steps out of that invisible cage. They detach from every unspoken obligation and finally choose to live according to the rhythm of their own spirit instead of the demands placed upon it. This detachment is not rebellion, it is liberation. They stop saying yes to avoid conflict. They stop overextending themselves to maintain harmony. They stop sacrificing their time, energy, and emotional bandwidth just to keep someone else stable. Instead, they turn inward and ask the question they've avoided for years: what do I need? And for the first time, their answer takes priority. The empath who once shaped themselves around others now enforces a life shaped by intention, self-respect, and emotional sustainability. The people around them feel this shift immediately. Where the empath once poured effort into relationships that gave nothing back, they now give only when it aligns with their well-being. Where they once moved quietly to meet expectations, they now move with purpose, uninterested in appeasing anyone who demanded more than they gave. This new independence unsettles those who relied on the empath's predictability. They can no longer guilt trip them, manipulate them, or pull them into drama. The Sigma Empath has stopped performing the version of themselves others preferred and replaced it with the version that is truest to who they are. Internally, this transformation feels like reclaiming a forgotten identity. They rediscover dreams buried beneath other people's needs. They rebuild boundaries from a place of strength rather than obligation. They act without asking permission, without defending their choices, and without worrying about being misunderstood. For the first time, their life becomes theirs. And once a Sigma Empath reaches this level of detachment, they do not return to the version of themselves that sacrificed everything for acceptance. They rise into a self-governed existence, one defined by clarity, sovereignty, and unwavering inner alignment. They stop absorbing others' emotions, protecting their energy at all costs. A Sigma Empath's cold phase is marked by one of the most profound shifts they ever experience, the moment they stop carrying emotions that don't belong to them. For most of their life, they absorbed the moods, fears, tensions, and unspoken struggles of everyone around them, often without realizing how much weight they were holding. But emotional betrayal, exhaustion, or repeated disappointment pushes them into a new state, a state where their system refuses to take on anything that drains them. They stop acting as emotional sponges and instead become mirrors that reflect responsibility back to its rightful owner. This transformation is not subtle. It is a reclaiming of their psychic space, the boundary their younger self never knew how to create. The shift begins with awareness. They start noticing when a room feels heavy, when someone's tone is charged, when energy shifts, but instead of internalizing it, they let it pass by them like a wave hitting a rock. There is no more blending, no more absorbing, no more becoming the quiet container for someone else's chaos. The empath who once intuitively stabilized every environment now chooses not to engage in energetic cleanup unless it aligns with their well-being. And this is not coldness. This is control, the kind they could never access when their heart was open to everyone's emotional storms. People who relied on them as emotional anchors feel the change immediately. Suddenly, the empath isn't stepping in to soothe tension or offering empathy to someone who weaponizes vulnerability. The comfort once freely given becomes intentional, selective, rare. Those who counted on the empath's emotional openness now find themselves confronting their own feelings without a buffer. And for the first time, the Sigma empath does not feel guilty for letting others sit with their own discomfort. They finally understand that emotional responsibility is not something to borrow from them. It's something each person must carry alone. Internally, this change is transformative. They feel lighter, clearer, more grounded. Their mind is no longer cluttered with emotions that were never theirs. Their intuition becomes sharper because it's no longer blurred by the noise of everyone else's inner world. Protecting their energy becomes a non-negotiable rule, not a hopeful intention. And once the Sigma empath reaches this state, they don't go back to absorbing emotional debris. They learn to exist with a calm, centered presence, untouched, undisturbed, and entirely aligned with their own emotional truth. Their intuition becomes sharper, guiding them away from anyone who once drained them. When a Sigma empath goes cold, their intuition doesn't just return, it intensifies. It becomes a precise internal compass that no longer hesitates, no longer second guesses, no longer gets softened by empathy or emotional attachment. Their intuition sharpens into something almost prophetic, capable of sensing the smallest inconsistencies, the quietest shifts in energy, the faintest signs of emotional danger. What they once explained away now becomes undeniable truth. What they once excused now becomes evidence. And this sharpened intuition guides them with a clarity that feels both empowering and irreversible. This shift starts with recognition. They begin to see patterns in the people who drained them, the manipulation hidden behind kindness, the subtle jealousy behind support, the entitlement behind affection. Before, their heart interfered with what their intuition already knew. But now, with emotional noise silenced, they can read a person's intentions in their tone, their posture, their timing, even in the silence between their words. They can feel when someone's presence tightens their chest or when someone's motives flicker with self-interest. There is no confusion, no internal battle, no debating whether they're overthinking. The empath finally trusts the part of themselves that was always right. Externally, this new clarity creates a shift others don't fully understand. The Sigma empath pulls away faster, cleaner, and earlier than before. They don't wait for betrayal to confirm their suspicion. They don't wait for proof to justify their feelings. If someone's energy feels off even slightly, they distance themselves without guilt or explanation. Their intuition becomes a boundary in itself, one that protects them more effectively than any spoken rule ever could. People who once drained them find themselves quietly removed, not in anger, but in self-preservation. Internally, this sharpened intuition brings peace. They no longer feel responsible for giving everyone access to their emotional world. They no longer stay in environments or relationships out of hope or habit. Their intuition guides them toward people who feel grounding, genuine, and safe, and away from those who once fed on their empathy. For the Sigma empath, this shift is not about fear. It is about evolution. After being hurt, drained, or betrayed, their intuition becomes the shield they always needed, the silent force that ensures they never lose themselves in someone else again. They rise into a calm, powerful version of themselves that no longer fears loss. The final transformation of a Sigma empath's cold phase is not harshness, bitterness, or emotional shutdown, it is evolution. They rise into a version of themselves that holds an unshakable calm, a quiet power that no longer trembles at the idea of being left, rejected, misunderstood, or replaced. Loss stops intimidating them because they finally understand something life tried to teach them through every wound. Anything that can be taken from them was never meant to stay, and with that truth, fear dissolves. The emotional grip others once had on them vanishes. They step into a state where their identity, peace, and worth are self-generated, not assigned by anyone else. This version of them is different from the empath people once knew. They no longer cling to relationships out of hope. They no longer tolerate mistreatment out of love. They no longer seek validation through being needed. Instead, they carry a deep internal certainty, a sense of self built not from comfort, but from everything they survived. The calmness around them is not emptiness, it is alignment. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows they can rebuild, recover, and reroute without losing themselves in the process. And that makes them impossible to control, manipulate, or emotionally corner. People around them feel this shift like a temperature drop. The empath who once feared losing someone now moves with the grounded stability of a person who knows that letting go is sometimes the most powerful decision they can make. They don't beg, they don't chase, they don't negotiate their worth. Their calm becomes its own kind of strength, the kind that intimidates anyone who once relied on their softness, their patience, or their fear of abandonment. For the first time, they choose themselves without hesitation. Inside, this transformation feels like coming home. Peace becomes their baseline, boundaries become natural, intuition becomes trusted. They no longer crumble at endings because endings no longer feel like failures. They feel like clarity. They feel like protection. They feel like a return to self. And in this stage, the Sigma empath becomes truly untouchable, not because they are guarded, but because they finally understand that nothing they lose can diminish the person they have become. Their power is no longer in giving endlessly. It's in knowing exactly when to walk away and never fearing what waits on the other side. When a Sigma empath reaches this stage, nothing external defines them anymore. They don't chase answers, they don't fear endings, and they don't cling to people who were never meant to stay. They walk with a calm strength that comes from surviving what should have broken them and choosing evolution instead. If you felt yourself in these shifts, it's not a coincidence. It's a sign that you're stepping into a version of yourself that no longer apologizes for protecting your energy or honoring your truth. Before you go, subscribe to Brainy Empath so you never miss the deeper layers of your own transformation. And tell me in the comments, which change hit you the hardest? If you watched until the end, type rising quietly so I know you're one of the empaths who doesn't just survive, you ascend.